and welcome to the India Hangout. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on his way to the United States for what appears to be a landmark visit. Many issues are going to be discussed. Let's focus on a couple of them. The economical, political and geopolitical issues that are most important and must be addressed, if not resolved in some ways. Joining me to discuss this, Devendra Pant of India Ratings, as well as Kishan Rana, former ambassador of India. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Devendra, let me begin with you. This is obviously a trip which is has many dimensions to it. What are the ones that you're looking at most specifically, and interesting that Standard & Poor's has just raised our ratings?
Not the rating, the outlook, which was negative,
yes, to stable.
More back to stable. Well, see, the most of the investors are based out of U.S. Whether we look at the equity FII participants in Indian markets, the CalPERS or others. So what we had seen in past few years, when there was some sort of policy logjam or the standstill at the policy level, we had seen the capital flow drying up, and on the top of that, when we talked about U.S. quantitative easing going out, so India was very vulnerable last year around this point of time. And post that, what we had done is increased through increased capital inflows, we were able to create a war chest, so to say, or increase our forex reserves.
Right.
So, if you look at when we talk about current account deficit is sustained, and so 3% sustained is that will be sustained if and only if we have regular inflow of capital, foreign capital, which we can finance the current account deficit. So that is the first issue, and then the second issue comes whether we are having inflows in the form of debt-creating capital inflows or non-debt-creating capital inflows. So whether we are bringing in FDI, so FDI and FII both are non-debt creating inflows. But if we are creating this by ECB or by FCCB, then at the time of maturity there are issues which puts pressure on currency. Again, between non-debt creating FDI is more preferred route, more preferred form. A, because it is stable, it does not leave country immediately, and B, once that gets into our production process, and we know, all of us know, we have huge requirement for infrastructure.
Right.
Now, whether it's the physical infrastructure or the human infrastructure. So when we talk about human infrastructure, the skill level of the population, of the people has to be upgraded. The health conditions of the people have to be better. Now, these all goes into the production process. Some generally focusing more on the physical infrastructure, but somehow we are not focusing enough on human infrastructure.
Devendra, let me just interrupt you there for a moment.
Yeah.
Let me get a sense from Kishan Rana as well as to what he sees or what he feels are the key issues at stake as we at the beginning or at the outset of this of the Modi trip to the United States.
I must begin by saying that I missed almost everything that Devendra said.
Okay.
These are the wonders of technology. Some things go through, some things do not. But I hear you loud and clear.
Right.
So you will have to act as a relay point, perhaps.
Sure.
I would begin that we sometimes arouse excessive expectations of our leaders. We imagine that one visit will be a landmark event, that every visit will produce a dramatic breakthrough. The real world doesn't like that. There are changes, there are improvements depending on objective conditions. I would say, first of all, for India, it is in the economic arena to show, to prove that we are open for business. We say we are open for business. Every government has favored economic reforms. But under the previous government, there was a constant situation of mixed signals on taxation matters, on retroactive taxation. A whole series of steps were taken that did not show that we were really open for business. Politically, we would like to speak sometimes of, Winston had said a long while back, countries don't have permanent friends and they don't have permanent enemies, they only have permanent interests. And our interest is essentially to take India forward in a peaceful, stable environment in a way that works for ourselves, our neighbors, and everybody else. I am delighted that Prime Minister Modi began with small neighbors. I think this was a powerful signal that had to be conveyed. Now tell me, anyone justify a situation that we do not visit the Himalayan neighbor of Nepal bilaterally at the level of prime ministers for 26 years? What were a whole series of prime ministers doing? They went on visits to Finland. They went on visits to a whole clutch of East European countries. Now, are we serious? So, the United States is obviously a major, major partner. We need to show both in words and in deeds that we are truly open for business. I think Make in India is a wonderful, large slogan under which a whole series of policies can be crafted. But it is these concrete steps that will matter, not grand statements. And finally, the geostrategic, as you asked. Well, of course, India wants good relations with all the major powers, and the United States is the first, shall we say, still very much the dominant global power. We don't have exclusive relations with any country. We believe in strategic autonomy, which is simply a sophisticated way of saying that we are not bound to the chariot of any single country. That's as it should be. I think countries are beginning to understand that. I think even China seems to be less hypersensitive of India's relations with Washington, D.C. or with Tokyo. So let's move forward on all these three fronts. And, I think we will have opportunity to talk of the other dimensions of the visit, which are no less important: the diaspora, the education dimension, the cultural dimension, etc.
Right. Okay, Devendra, let me assessment are the economic issues that we need to look at, either on a trade, from a trade point of view, or an overall investment climate point of view, and more importantly, from what we've attempted to initiate with Japan and China just recently.
Well, I believe the whole entire issue is same. The kind of focus will remain same as what was there in China and with Japan. Now, with China, there was some change in the sense like close by, and it has China has developed infrastructure very fast. So some sort of, when we're talking about the bullet trains and all those, so the China and Japan have done it. So from their experience, we can learn a lot. And the equity coming in, the money coming in, because all of us know that China is the amount of currency reserves it has, the amount of surplus it has. But when it comes to the U.S., I believe the focus will be more on some cutting edge technology. Whether if one views it vis-a-vis the Make in India campaign, which was started yesterday. Talking about aviation, we are talking about space and all those. Although ISRO has done wonders, it has done so much proud for us. And moreover, look, today's media reports shows like it's only the 2% of their engineers are from IITs or NIITs. So I fail to understand when our engineers can provide us a cutting edge technology and can help us. The mission on Mars is right on the very first time. How come we are lagging in some other aspects? Say, for example, the simple thing, the road construction. Everybody knows that the road is good. The moment the first rain comes, the road is washed away. So what we can do it. But more than that, there are other sectors, whether we are technicians, whether we are talking about other technology. I believe with the U.S., the focus will be more on the technological front, compared to what it was with the China and what it was with the Japan.
Right. Okay. So let me come back to you, Mr. Rana. So, one of the criticisms or continuing criticisms is that there is a lot of engagement with the US for a whole bunch of reasons, but India actually gets very little out of it. I mean, there is a sense of satisfaction, perhaps because obviously there's a strong cultural tie, there are people, there are relationships, but there is really very little flowing, and that hasn't changed much despite all the discussions to that effect.
Well, today's Times of India has an article by Teresa Schaefer, former US ambassador, where she says that there is a beyond the Beltway. See, the United States is a dispersed country. It's truly a decentralized federal entity. Companies make their own investment decisions. Nobody really bullies them or pushes them into doing something. It's in some ways perhaps the opposite of China. So it's wonderful that Prime Minister Modi is going to meet with 6 major financial and industrial leaders individually. That's very important in my eyes. We promised the Japanese a Japan fast track. Now, others will stand up and say, hey, what about us? I had really converted this, and we can still do it. We convert this into an India fast track, that we are equally solicitous of all foreign investors, and we all with open arms, and that we show this through actions. You're right, perhaps the flows of FDI from the United States have not been spectacular, not in the last 10, 12 years. But then there have been other things that have been happening. The research R&D facility in Bangalore, one of the world's biggest R&D facilities. It now has 4,500 graduate engineers, at least 1/3 of them holding doctorates, doing cutting-edge applied research in products that will go into effect in developing countries, applying C.K. Prahlad's beautiful notion of lean technology and lean engineering and the fortune at the bottom of the... I think these are the things that will help us. And let us also keep focus on employment generation, skill upgradation. These things will go together. We cannot afford jobless growth.
Right.
We cannot afford simply a growth that takes place in good numbers but doesn't create much larger avenues of employment. And I think for this, the real crux is what we do in India. I never tire of giving the example that 68 years after independence, India is still an exporter of raw cotton and cotton yarn. That's a colonial pattern.
And stones.
Now,
yeah, I think you forgot
who
stones.
forces on us? Ourselves.
Yeah.
We have wonderful, plants and factories that are producing world-class yarn. But why the hell are they not producing garments, value-added garments? If Bangladesh becomes the world's 2nd biggest garment manufacturer, what are we doing? What do we have to do right? It's
right.
our
So,
misguided
Mr. Rana,
policy.
can I ask you a question? We're running a quick question on the region. AFPAC. What are the key concerns that you would have from your point of view or your vantage point that you feel again we need to address? So I think the economic issue is important, and we've touched upon that. The trade issue is important, and we've touched upon that. What about the regional geopolitical issues or the pending issues, as it were?
I don't see myself as a great expert on AFPAC issues. I have to be candid enough to say that. I think the larger regional picture is that we have to carry our with us. Will Pakistan join the process of dynamism of South Asia? Well, that's Pakistan's choice. I don't think we can bully Pakistan into doing anything different. But Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all the other countries want to move forward. We need to connect better with Southeast Asia. I like the slogan somebody came up with. Instead of look east, let's act east. I think it's a little more dynamic than just looking. So now, act east and link west. That's again a nice little slogan that we can come up with. But regionally, we need to work with all our neighbors, and that includes. Very often we talk of Southeast Asia, we talk of other countries, and we kind of leave China into a blank. I think that's changing.
Right. So, is a quick last question. I mean, is this whole thing now coming together? You know, I'm talking about the international, the neighbors. Secondly, the visit to Japan, the Chinese premier's visit to India, all the deals announced, and now finally the trip to the U.S. Of course, preceded by the trip to Brazil. So, is this now all coming together for the time being, so that we can now then come back to the domestic sector?
I think so. I think it's coming together. What we need to stitch up with this is West Asia, our powerful neighborhood there, Central Asia, which we cannot afford to ignore, and Southeast Asia. So over the next, 3-4 months, if the Prime Minister finds time to cover these three regions in whatever fashion, we can really say we have covered it all. And of course, Russia. I think there is an incoming Russian visit possibly pending.
Right.
That would take care of that end. And let's not leave out the European Union. The European Union is a very special friend of ours. Much of our reforms began, I think the Europeans were among the first to see an opportunity in the 91 reforms. So let's take that on board with us.
Right. So the US is looking good, or at least it's a good start. Much should be achieved. The European Union, and then we are back to business back in India. Gentlemen, we've run out of time.
Constantly keep the focus at home.
Constantly keep the focus at home. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Devendra, Ambassador Rana, thank you very much for joining us on the India Hangout. We're going to be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.